Welcome back to the No Limits Life podcast, where we explore leadership, transformation, and the power of service. I'm your host, Nordine, joined by my co-host, Ken. Today, we welcome a distinguished leader whose journey from the cockpit to the boardroom reflects the spirit of discipline, vision, and impactful civic service. Leadership is not about the position you hold, but the responsibility you carry to lift others and shape the future. Leadership is not about titles, it's about trust. It's not about sitting at the top. It's about rising with purpose and lifting others as you go. The real power of leadership lies in responsibility to guide, to serve, to build a better path forward. You don't need a formal role to lead. You need intention, integrity, and heart. Our guest today lives that truth. With nearly 34 years of decorated military service and now as president and CEO of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, he continues to serve his community with unwavering purpose, from flying F-16s to influencing policies that shapes Arizona's future. His journey is one of clarity, courage, and contribution. Please welcome to the show Major General Retired Ted Maxwell.
Thank you, Nordine. I appreciate it. And Ken, thank you for
Maxwell,
reaching out.
Here.
It's great to be here. It's always
honor.
fun to have a nice conversation.
You're our first general, right?
It's an honor
On a
to have you
podcast.
here. You are. I want to start with that quote today that I just read. Leadership, it's not about the position you hold, but the responsibility you carry to lift others and shape the future. How does this reflect your view of leadership, both in the military and your current work as SALC?
The fact to me on anything you want to do in life that's going to have an impact on others, you have to do as an organization or as a group. Mm-hmm. And whether it was in the military where it's young men and women who have volunteered to serve, mm-hmm. and there's no shortage of the men and women in our country that will volunteer to serve their country, but you can't do it without them. Yes, I was an F-16 pilot, but every day I walked out to that plane and talked to somebody probably generally between the ages of 18 and 24, and I say, is the plane good to fly? And the answer was always yes. And if it wasn't, then I was a little worried because I didn't think I'd get to fly that day.
Was it yes or yes, sir?
Yeah. Well, I was yes, sir, sometimes, sometimes not. Sometimes like, you're asking me that question, sir? What are you thinking? But the point being is you have to have faith and trust in the people that you're working with. Life's journey, there's been a lot of ups and downs through my military career. There were a lot of things that I had to relearn later in life. But it really comes down to is if you want to lead an organization, whether you're the lowest person in the organization to the highest person in the organization, the way you're going to do it is to be who you are, mm-hmm. be your authentic self, mm-hmm. but then also to make sure you've got that connection. I've seen so many folks throughout my career that have been great up to one point, and then they finally are put in an official leadership position. Mm-hmm. And they become somebody that they weren't before that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You've got to be yourself. I listened to one of your first show, I believe, mm-hmm. when you interviewed each other.
Right.
And you talked a lot about that inner person. And mm-hmm. I'm a huge believer that in leadership, it is about being the authentic person that you are.
Yeah, and when you are that authentic person, you lead with truth. You lead with spirit, and you lead with energy. Because after all, whether you try to hide it or not, sooner or later, people can feel your energy, feel what you are thinking or even feeling. So, as you said, I lead with my authentic self. I want you to delve a little bit more and tell listeners and watchers, what does it mean to be your authentic self?
I mean, the reality of it is we all know there's multiple personality tests out mm-hmm. there. We've probably taken them all. And every time I try to—
Masks, yeah.
Yeah. Every time I try to trick one, it always comes back and it tells me, no, this is who you are. It's mm-hmm. almost always the same for mm-hmm. me. But to me, on the leadership side, the authentic self is anybody can lead. Anybody can lead mm-hmm. inside of an organization. It doesn't matter, like I said, if you're the lowest, youngest airman mm-hmm. or you're the youngest employee at your company, you can make a difference and show others the way. A lot of times it's kind of easier at the beginning of your career because all you've got to do is do the job the best you can and demonstrate what's the best thing for the organization.
Demonstrate. That's the word I was looking for. A leader demonstrates, and a leader takes your hand and walks with you. And that's what you do.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I don't call that leading. if you're pointing at something and then let me go do it on my own, that's not leading me. It's showing me, basically.
It's a great opportunity for young, men and women who are getting involved in business, in an organization, in sports. You see it all the time in sports. I'm a huge sports fan. Played sports my whole life growing up.
I can see that.
And well, that's good genes. That's not necessarily good work. But the fact of the matter is, every player on that team can make a difference, even if you're not stepping on the field. Your contribution in practice, and you hear guys like Tommy Lloyd, the coach of the U of A basketball team, talk about the practice players. They're the ones that push the starters, the stars of the team. But everybody's got that leadership role. It's very rare that there's a time and place for, let's take the hill, follow me, I'm going. But there's also the time and place to let other people try and succeed and sometimes fail, because they're going to become better for that failure. The most interesting thing for me on the authentic self, there's multiple books on different types of leaders. But I have seen individuals that have had a chance to step into a leadership position, and then all of a sudden you go, who are you? I didn't put you in that position, or I wasn't working for you. And when you got that position, I said, great, this is going to be, you become a different person.
Yeah. I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're referring to there is when you say, lead with your authentic self, but you're also allowing the people you're leading to be their authentic self.
You have to.
That's only possible with one thing, and that's the love for yourself.
That's true. It all comes back to your own confidence, your own structure.
Absolutely.
And not arrogance.
Absolutely.
Your own belief in yourself.
Arrogance stems from fear, from ego, right? So what we established that ego is driven by fear. And fear is not a very healthy thing, because sooner or later, it's going to boomerang, okay? It's going to hit you in the face. And so we cannot be our authentic self without love. We cannot allow other people to be their authentic self if we don't have love. I want people to understand that. If you are leading, so-called leading with control and anger, and of course, discipline is important. Teaching people to build their willpower, all of that is important, but you can do it with love. It's the same in relationship. You can have a perfectly successful marriage or romantic partnership when you lead with love, when you are both allowing each other to be our authentic self. And that's in every relationship, whether it's business, romantic, like I said, or leadership. It takes, as you mentioned, an amount of authentic self. Can only be happening with love.
Absolutely. And I call it with some compassion and caring. You've got to really care that the people you're working with, you want them to succeed, not just for the organization, because you start putting the organization ahead of the people, and it's going to fail.
And that is what I was referring to. Control and the bottom line, all of these big things. And one of the things that I found and I'm sure that you heard that before, many times, tough love.
Yeah.
There is no tough love. There is no soft love. There is only love.
Yeah.
Okay?
No,
what
absolutely.
we call soft love or tough love is a cop-out. Same as when you say to someone, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Did you know that there is no other language that allows for that cop-out? In French, je t'aime is je t'aime. There is no je t'aime donc je t'aime. It doesn't exist. Okay? It's a cop-out. We leave room to get out. It's an exit.
A lot of times when you talk about the tough love, supposed tough love, there is. I'm a military, member all my life. There is a fact about discipline, and that doesn't mean punishment. That means discipline.
Exactly.
Being structured, following the rules, do what you're supposed to do to be counted on. You have to be reliable, and you have to be counted on. As a fighter pilot, the most important part of learning, and I've seen businesses that don't do well with this, I've seen other organizations that don't do well with this, it's the debrief. Because you have to debrief. And we will spend a couple hours briefing what we're going to go do. We'll then go fly and spend an hour and 15 minutes doing what we briefed we were going to do tactically and but we may spend 3 hours debriefing it. Wow. If it all went like planned and everything was good, it's going to be a shorter debrief. But if there's learning points, and the most important thing in those debriefs is the rank came off the shoulders. Because just the flight lead could have made the mistake that cost everybody, and you would have failed.
Exactly.
So you need to hear from the youngest, the most experienced, the instructors. You all have a role playing in this debrief.
So they're all important.
And then I'll call it brutal honesty.
Yeah. And that's where the one thing that my father taught me, and that's something I discussed with you, Ken, do not confuse logic with emotion. Oil and water don't
I use
mix.
that all the time, by the way.
So there are times, what we refer to tough love is that when you have to step out of the emotional and use the rational and logic things and explain to whoever you talk, whether it's a constructive criticism in management or leadership or in the army, and hold people accountable for their mistake. In other words, what we're doing is bringing awareness.
And you have to be able to acknowledge if the mistake was yours. And sometimes it's the most effective way to teach somebody about the mistakes they made is to also acknowledge your role in them making that mistake.
But don't you think that is also a question of delivery?
Of course.
You can deliver a message with anger and frustration that doesn't really ring well to the person who's hearing it. Or the same message can be delivered with compassion, love, and would be really, really making a difference.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because I talked about the authentic leadership. There's different ways. I've got several stories through my military career where I was at events and all of a sudden I go, wow, we did the personality test. I would have thought everybody on the discs would have been the D and the I, the real hard chargers, the ones that want to get it done. But there was about as many of these commanders from this room sitting over there in what you'd call the more controlled, relaxed. And when they spoke, I've spoken so many times with classrooms and an environment that if you're quiet and you don't think you can lead, you're wrong. Because the moment you speak up, everybody listens.
Right.
Because you normally aren't the one doing that. There are some great examples in the military. I mean, Patton, I think, is a phenomenal example because I think people would say he was a tough love leader. He was a motivator, yeller. But at that time, the reason he was so successful with his authentic leadership style was in times of war because he knew that there could be no hesitation, that you needed to go in, you needed to be confident, you needed to be fired up, you needed to do this. And so he was very successful. He struggled quite often in his military career when it wasn't during times of conflict because it didn't necessarily fit his leadership style or what he believed in. So I think sometimes we try to be somebody we're not. And that's where I think you make the mistakes. And a quick story about at the age of 50, I went back to get my MBA. I knew I was going to probably be retiring.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Not easy.
I didn't retire for a few years because I ended up getting called to my final assignment as the commander of the Arizona Air National Guard while I was there. But I went to a classroom where I was the senior person in the program. There were a couple people that thought they were as old as me. They weren't. They eventually figured that out. But everybody in that room, they didn't care that I was a colonel. Matter of fact, when I made general, they kind of said, oh, that's kind of cool because it happened when I was in the program. But it took me a while to realize that I had to go back and earn their respect. And I started to realize that in my military career, as I went up that pyramid, and one thing that is great about the military, you can take in all the inputs, but the person at the end of the table is going to ultimately make the decision. But I realized that I had lost some of my authentic self because I was relying more on and maybe getting a little bit more irritated with no, that's a bad idea. Let's move on. Instead of being the one that sits there, listens, talks, and tries to go through it. I think I was an informal leader in my time at the Air Force Academy because I was a terrible cadet and I was in trouble all the time. But I was still one of those folks that I think my classmates would turn to and look at because they knew I wanted to succeed and I wanted to get us as a group through this, whatever we were dealing with at the time. And I think that's what I was able to take into my transition into the civilian world, working with high-powered CEOs that run companies. And I'm just this military member that's going to come in and lead this organization. Yeah. But it became apparent to me that I couldn't try to be somebody else. I needed to go back to my authentic roots, who I was. I'm a big believer in like the Tony Dungy books. If anybody wants to read things on mentorship and on leadership, I think they're great. You've got to find stuff that you connect with to help build that and
Find
understand
stuff
who you
connect
are.
with. Yeah, absolutely. And make no mistake, we know when we are not being authentic.
Very true.
We feel it. The ego, the thoughts are maybe going against it, saying, "Oh no, no, no," but deep down, when you're authentic.
Yeah.
You know when you're in a loving place, and when you're in a fearful place, and the ability to navigate from one to the other is awareness.
And that awareness is especially important in challenging times.
Oh yeah.
And that's when that's when it's hardest to stick with who we believe we are and how we interact.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about, you hear talk about an animal that's backed into a corner, and then all of a sudden, they're not who they were. But all of a sudden you get that fear, and that's probably the most important time that you need to maintain your composure and, again, be true to yourself, because the only way you're going to lead, folks, is to be true to yourself, which will be being true to everybody else.
Yeah, the only way to find out that you're true to yourself is when you're not true to yourself. Otherwise,
that is true.
You have no awareness and you keep on fooling yourself.
Right.
Like many people I know, they don't have that ability. They live in the world where a comfortable zone where the reality is no longer available to them.
So I wanted to talk to you about your Air Force journey. 4,300 hours, right, of flight time?
Yes, sir.
And 34 years of service.
Yeah, the scary part is for 34 years of service, that's not the most amount of flying time with a lot of guys. I've got friends now that have flown 5,000, 6,000 hours in the F-16, and I just go, wow, how could they do it for so long? But,
wow.
But yeah, I got just under 3,000 hours in the F-16 and 4,300 hours total.
That's amazing. I guess, my question is, how has that time of flying and the 34 years of service, how has that shaped you?
The irony, Ken, in it is when I went to the Air Force Academy, I wasn't interested in flying.
Really? What did you want to do?
I actually had a grand scheme plan to go there, graduate, spend 5 years. I was taking Russian. I wanted to go over there and be an air attaché for a while, come back to D.C., and then end up staying in D.C. and get involved in more in the political side of it.
Okay.
I went to the Air Force Academy because they've got an incredible intramural program. I wasn't a good enough athlete to play college-level sports, but I could hold my own, and I got to continue to play 3 more years of competitive football, basketball,
nice.
and all sorts of other sports through that process. And I really thought going there was going to be the same thing. Folks who were involved in leadership at their schools were academically strong and were athletically strong. I learned that the Air Force Academy's got a lot of students just like every other university. They're all different. Everybody's different. But they do a good job of convincing you that flying is what you want to do. And by the time I graduated, all I wanted to do was flying. And the funny part about it is now I can't envision my life without flying.
Wow.
There's a piece of it that's the control and being in charge, especially being I was blessed to get to fly fighter aircraft for a long time, where it's quite a bit of the time you're the only person in the plane. You're making all the decisions. You're making the action. It's fluid and everything goes. But I think it really built that reliance on others, because you cannot complete a mission without the help and support of others. And it's teamwork in the air. You and the other pilots in the Air Force for a long time, the pilots were the ones that got the,
But you're a football
the
player.
grade.
It's all about team, right?
Exactly.
Basketball player.
Yeah, and there were times that I spent most of the time on the bench, and that's okay. It's still about being part of the team
It's what I
and
call
being
the
there.
non-biological family.
There's so much in sports. It's the thing I've worried about as we've gone more to e-gaming, and you see that some of the same thing in that, but we've lost some of that just being out on the field and understanding how everybody plays a role on the team. And I think other than my love of flying, and I still fly in a small single-engine prop plane, and
It's in your blood now.
It is. I can just go out and enjoy it because of the freedom, the feeling, not connected again to the ground. You're up in there. But it really
Truly being connected.
yeah. But it really, what it showed me was just the camaraderie. It truly was. It was the camaraderie that made me always want to be part of a team, and that's the
So
thing.
do you miss that now?
Do you know?
That part of a team?
Yeah.
I'm part of one of the biggest teams I've ever been part of. The Southern Arizona Leadership Council's got more than 150 CEOs and senior executives in their businesses, and we're all about public policy.
So
Which
you brought all that experience into this organization.
Absolutely, and I know that I'm not the expert in the room.
You're a facilitator, though.
We're the facilitators.
Okay.
And we're the ones that take the message from the experts to the elected officials and then try to engage and get them to see the light in our message. But you have to sell that as the right message for the whole. And our whole premise is it's through a strong economy that you're going to provide opportunity and jobs and education that will allow everyone to achieve who they can truly be. It's, we're going to address crime, we're going to address poverty through jobs, opportunity, and education. And sometimes we lose sight of that. It's kind of a different governmental approach. It's the government wants to be important to the people, but at the same time, you've got to let people learn to stand on their own and learn how to become that leader, or learn how to, and whether that leadership pays off into their work experience, into their family experience, their community experience. It's all important. So that's the flying part was fun. That was the fun part of my job.
It's a
but
team.
the teamwork part was what I was afraid I'd really miss.
Right.
But I found that in the business community, depending the organization you're working
and that's
with,
where
you can find.
I want to dive a little bit more into the word that you mentioned earlier, camaraderie. Camaraderie. There was studies made on veterans. People came back from war, and the one thing that they discovered when it came to PTSD, I don't want to really delve into the psychological part of it, but the one thing that was missing was camaraderie.
Absolutely.
That was the big one.
The toughest part for military members who are coming out with PTSD or any kind of injuries or anything is the feeling of being alone. Because as long as they were a member of the military, they were part of a team. There are no, I won't say no, but there's very few individual missions. Because even if you're going in as a single person, you've got a whole team behind you that's providing you the support, the communications, the logistics, the supplies, and
it's the family
things you need. It's a family. Yeah. And the unique thing about the military, there's always exceptions to the rule, but in our country's military now, where we're 100% volunteer, that means everybody put their hand up in the air and joined for a reason. And that reason's to advance in our way of life, the freedoms we've got in this country, our opportunities to make that go. And so everybody that shows up at work has got that sense. That's what they're there for. Matter of fact, one of the most strong statements I ever saw, former Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Mark Welsh. He happened to be my operations officer flying F-16s in Utah. But he came and visited the Guard unit out there. And here's this 4-star general, highest ranking seat that he's got in the U.S. Air Force. And he opened it up to the 800 men and women that were in this hangar for questions. And he had one of our airmen ask a question. He goes, "Sir, how are we going to help address the fact that all this time, when I first joined, there was all this camaraderie, all this sense of purpose, and now it's just kind of like a job." And the 4-star stood up there, thought about it, and he said, "It's never been just like a job to me." He goes, "So I think you need to look at what it is that you have let go, because everybody else in here is here for the same reason. Maybe different motivations, maybe different needs, but everybody's here for the same reason. So if you think this is just a job, remember what your ultimate purpose, if you are asked, is to go do." And it was just a way of putting it back into camaraderie is so critical. And when somebody's served and they lose that, it's very difficult. And that's why there's so many programs, Wounded Warrior and all these, they bring the veterans together. Because whether you've served with an individual anyway in life, when you meet a veteran, you quite often, you have that bond.
Bond.
You have that bond. You've got that connectivity. And that's why it's so important for healing with folks who are having problems. I mean, the one thing I do when I speak to a group of particularly veterans now, I always want to make sure that I do one thing, and that's thank the Vietnam veterans. The Vietnam veterans, unlike the World War II veterans, the World War I veterans, even the Korean veterans for the most part, never got that giant welcome home and thank you from the country.
You kind of got the opposite.
They got just the opposite. They were coming back in, getting out of their uniform and doing all that. And I have never once in my 34-year career, and I entered the military as a cadet in 1980, and I retired in 2018. So that's 38 years, but the 4 years in going to college is going to college. Never, ever once had anybody come up to me when I was in uniform and degrade me in any way. It was like the Vietnam War is what it took for our country to say, okay, I don't have to love the war, but I need to love the warrior because they have willingly, and since we've been a volunteer military, put our hands up. Everyone that's serving has said, I will do this for the country. The thing that I'm so impressed with the Vietnam veterans, and the reason I always thank them and welcome them home, is because they all didn't put their hands up to volunteer. Many of them were drafted. Mm-hmm. Many of them were told, your country needs you. And you know what? They went.
Right.
They went and they served. And so to me, that's a special place.
Yeah, and you know, as you mentioned earlier, compassion goes a long way, and the ability to reassess your purpose. Mm-hmm. What is it you want to do here? You come out from where you are in the as a military career and the service of your fellow Americans or anyone who you're helping, and that is making sure that you reassess. And I'm sure that's one of the things that you're teaching at Authentic Self program. Transitioning from military service to public policy and community leadership is no small feat, as we know. What motivated that shift, and why is it so important to you to be a part of building Arizona's future?
Well, there's a couple things that I'm proud of. For me personally, it was kind of ironic because I told you when I went to the Air Force Academy, I thought I wanted to get into this political space. That's what I really wanted to do. And then I got sidetracked by 34 years of flying aircraft. So I had an affinity anyway to trying to make it a better place. As you go up in the military and as you go up into any organization to higher levels, a lot of that job becomes more political. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And especially as a guardsman, as Governor Brewer was the one that appointed me. Governor Ducey reappointed me into my position. And then Governor Ducey, after I'd retired, appointed me to the Arizona State Transportation Board. Those have all helped foster my ability to represent and lead the business leaders of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. But what I found with that organization, because the way I got that job is I went in to talk to the president of the organization because he was retired military. He had been out in one of my jobs previously, and I was having some issues with the airport, and I wanted to ask him the backstory to how we got to a place that I was trying to work out. Then at the end I said, how'd you find a job when you retired? I thought I'd be retiring pretty quick. And he said, well, told me a story. And he says, why, are you retirement eligible? I said, yeah, I could retire now, but I'm not going to retire. I just started my MBA. I'm going to retire in 2 years. He goes, really? He goes, what do you know about my organization? I knew nothing. 3 days later, he offered me a job. 2 days later, I put in my first retirement paperwork.
Wow.
Luckily, I was blessed to come back. But what I found when I started working with this organization, every one of these CEOs and business leaders wasn't there because they were trying to further their business or make their connections, because the organization's not a networking organization. We're not a typical chamber. They were there because they felt passionately about making this place, both regionally and in the state, a better place to live. Mm-hmm. And again, the belief, it goes back to that common sense. Those who put their hands up to serve in the military, you're serving in the military because you believe in this country and you want to make it a better place and you want to see our values be expanded throughout the world. Let's create more opportunities for freedom throughout the world, not less. And what I found inside the Southern Arizona Leadership Council was the desire to make the community as a whole better and do it through that, lifting people up, providing opportunities, ensuring everybody's getting educated. So from that respect, it became it was an easy thing to get excited about. Mm-hmm. Now, dealing with the politicians has been another challenge. And I think anybody who's willing to run for public office, at least the first time they do it, they're doing it for all the right reasons. Mm-hmm. They think they can help make this a better place. And they want to get engaged. And I think most of them still will tell you at their core that's what there is. But the challenges of politics sometimes take them all in different directions. But I do believe they believe in what they're telling you, what they think is best. Even if, with all due respect, I don't believe what they're saying is with the best. But that's the challenge.
Yeah, I think somewhere along the way they dropped that belief to be at the service of humanity, and it becomes more of a what's in it for me.
And that's the challenge. And I think you see that with some, with others you see them still at their core self wanting to make a difference. Mm. It's a tough world to step into.
Yeah, absolutely. I
don't know, I couldn't do it now.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
And but they really want to step into that space. And so you've got to give them credit, but that doesn't mean we're ever going to stop trying to explain to them why we think this is the best path forward. And that's what, as long as this country's 250 years of one of the world's greatest experiments, and that's self-determination. And we've got to keep that side of our country alive, in my opinion.
And it all stems from one place, and that is in here.
It's all inner. It's at the core.
Authentic self. Yeah.
It's all at your core.
When
beliefs.
you find yourself being disauthentic or dishonest, you completely miss the point.
You miss the point. I think it's a hard facade to keep up. Now, when I first
hard facade.
It's a facade.
It's a facade.
And when I graduated from the Air Force, I'll be real honest. The Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Those were words. Over time, I realized the importance they make. I mean, the integrity and the lying, and you always tell the truth. If for a lot of reasons. One is it's a lot easier to remember what the truth is, and you don't have to remember all the lies you said. But two, that's being true to yourself. That's being true to who you are, and it's being true to your beliefs. If there's a reason you did something that you don't want to acknowledge, well, it's just better to acknowledge it than explain the reason you did it, even if it didn't turn out well. But I really think that is where it's so important that people have to understand success is defined also inside yourself. If you feel that you did something the right way, I guarantee you will have more joy in what you're doing and accomplishing.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to change the world.
And
you just have to.
It's as you mentioned it. It gets better.
Yes.
And that's the message here. Even if you don't believe initially, and you're doing something for the right reason, the right cause, sooner or later, that belief is going to start building, get stronger and stronger.
And I think we all have a sense of the people we're talking to.
Absolutely.
And there is a little bit of that aura, if you want. And you can
The
read
energy, yes.
when somebody is not being truthful with you.
You can't fool energy.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So,
well, Ted, General Maxwell, thank you. Thank you for your service and for continuing to lead with integrity and honesty. As we can see it here. It's emulate the whole room.
We can feel your generalness.
Yeah, exactly. And,
generally, that's true. That might be true.
Your commitment to shaping a better future, whether it's in the sky or here, is it's mind-boggling. It's and thank you.
You're more than welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here as well. I think the focus you are taking on your podcast really gives. Everybody will find something from each podcast they can take with them.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's
And that's what we're
if we
doing.
can just help one person, that's all that matters.
And, it's for us, it's for me at least, and I know for Ken and Emilio as well, every time I get out of an episode, like a recording such as yours, I'm a better person. Every single one, I'm a better person. And that's, that's for me, my reward. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and please watch, listen, and like, share, comment,
Subscribe.
Do whatever you need, subscribe, help us help you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work, Ken.
Yep, thank
Emilio.
you. Thank you. This is a great show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Always follow